So today we'll be talking about Wireshark and what it is used for in cybersecurity. So we have introduction to Wireshark and its use in cybersecurity. What is Wireshark? Now, Wireshark is an open source network protocol analyzer. It captures and analyzes network packets in real time. You know, there was a time I told you that when you are sending messages on WhatsApp or through the internet, your messages actually goes in what we call packets. Now, these packets, they are tools that you can use to actually capture these packets to see how your information or your message is moving through the internet. So one of these tools is known as Wireshark. So that's why I said it captures and analyzes network packets in real time. Then we have used to inspect data moving across a network. It helps you understand what's happening on your network at the packet level. That is, it helps you to understand what is happening on your network at the packet level, in the sense that you'll be able to monitor and analyze packets to see what is coming into your network and what is going outside your network. Now, available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So it's available for Windows, available for Mac, then it's available for Linux also. Originally known as Ethereum, it was renamed Wireshark in 2006 and has grown into a leading packet analyzer. So why use Wireshark in cybersecurity? Now, investigate network threats. Now, analyze suspicious traffic to uncover indicators of compromise. Now, one of the reasons why we make use of Wireshark in cybersecurity is to help us analyze suspicious traffic to uncover indicators of compromise. What do they mean by indicators of compromise? Indicators of compromise are events that occur that might actually be a threat to the organization. For instance, probably as a SOC analyst, you are monitoring logins of users or employees in an organization, and you notice that someone logs in at a time when the person is not supposed to log in. So that is an example of an indicator of compromise. That is, when something happening when it's not supposed to happen, which can actually be a threat to the organization, in the sense that it might be probably an hacker or a threat actor that is trying to gain access into the organization, or that tried to gain access into the organization and not the employee. Now, validate alerts from security services. Now, it helps to confirm if alerts from firewalls or IDS is intrusion detection system, then IPS, intrusion prevention system, are legitimate. Now, it helps to confirm if alerts from your firewalls are actually legitimate, because you'll be able to analyze the packets to see if those alerts are actually legitimate. Now, conduct forensic analysis after an incident. Reconstruct events by examining traffic history. That is, it helps to conduct forensic analysis, because when you are capturing packets, these packets could actually be saved. So if you are capturing packets during an incident, these packets can be analyzed, and as a it can be analyzed for investigation by forensics analysts. Now, understand malware behavior. Observe how malware communicates over the network in a sandbox or test environment. Now, Wireshark can also be used to observe how malware, that is a malicious software, communicates over a network and how it operates. Now, we have core features of Wireshark. We have real-time packet capture and analysis. That is, you can see live traffic and interact with packets as they arrive. That is, it captures packets in real time. How the information is moving over the internet, it captures it in real time. So you can always see that in real time. Then supports hundreds of protocols like HTTP, which is hypertext transfer protocol. We have the TCP, which is transfer control protocol. Then we have the DNS, domain name service. Then you have ICMP, which is internet control message protocol, and many more. So display filters for deep inspection, that is, you can actually display filters if you want to have a deep inspection or you want to have a deep investigation on those packets. Now, color-coded traffic views enhances readability and helps spot anomalies quickly. That is, it has a color-coded traffic views whereby when you see some colors are red, you'll be able to understand that these are actually anomalies that you should take note of. Now, packet exports and save options. Save captures as pcap files for later analysis or sharing. Now, packets that are captured on Wireshark are saved as a .pcap, just like you have a PDF file that is saved as .pdf. So Wireshark captured files are saved as pcap. Now, how Wireshark works. So captures packets from a chosen interface, such as the Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or virtual adapters. So you know Ethernet, these are ports on your endpoint devices that connects you to a network or the internet. Then you also have Wi-Fi, whereby you connect to a router, and you also have virtual adapter. So it captures packets from chosen interface. So you have to choose the interface that you want your packets to be captured on, if it's on the Wi-Fi interface or on the Ethernet interface. Now, breaks down packet data into protocol layers, shows Ethernet, IP, TCP/UDP, and application layers. So it shows you your IP, the IP address, then its TCP, shows you whether it's a UDP, and application layers. Now, displays readable details for analysis. You can view each field within the packet for investigation. That is, you can view the packets for investigation. Uses filters to manage large data sets. So crucial for focusing on specific events in a sea of packets. That is, you can actually filter out packets. If there's a particular packet you are looking for, or there's a particular packet you find suspicious, you can actually filter them out. Now, Wireshark interface overview. So we have the packet list pane that is displayed all captured packets with timestamps, source, destination, protocol, and info. So the packet list pane is where you see all your captured packets with the timestamp. Timestamp means the time when those packets were actually captured, when those packets came in. Now we also have packet details pane, shows the selected packets contents broken down by protocol layer. So we have the packet details pane where it shows the selected packets contents broken down by protocol layers. So we have packet bytes pane. This displays raw hexadecimal data for forensic and byte level analysis. So this is what the packet bytes pane does. Then we have the filter toolbar, input field to apply display and display filters. Example, we have the HTTP, we have the IP address is equal to you can input your IP address, the IP address you're actually planning to filter out. Then you have capture toolbar. Now, controls to start, stop, and configure packet session. So you can actually decide to stop and start the packets capture sessions. So we have common protocols captured. Now, the common protocols that are being captured by Wireshark, we have the TCP, which is the transfer control protocol. Then we have the UDP, which is the user datagram protocol. Now, these are the core transport protocols used almost all network communication. Now, most of the network communications we have uses TCP or UDP. Now, TCP, I think I want to explain what TCP does. So TCP, under TCP, you have something we call the three-way handshake, whereby if your IP address first goes to look for the IP address of the site or the server you want to visit, then the IP address of the server replies with. So when your own IP address goes to look for the IP address of that server, it's called a SYN request, SYN request. Now, the IP address of the server or the site or the website replies you with a SYN and ACK, which is a SYN and acknowledgement. Then your own IP address now acknowledges, which is an ACK, ACK, acknowledges. Now, after acknowledging, that is when transmission of data now starts to occur. So TCP makes sure that your data actually gets to its destination. That is, if you visit a website and you are trying to transmit between the website, probably you are updating something or you are inputting something, it makes sure that TCP makes sure that your details or your data gets to the source and also returns a response. But UDP doesn't care if your data gets to the correct source or not. TCP is actually slow, while UDP is fast. UDP is usually used most times for video games, online video games, or video calls. For instance, now this call we are making use of now is using UDP because we need a very fast connection whereby it transmits my data to you very fast, so there won't be any. But TCP will actually make sure that your message gets to. So, for instance, WhatsApp message could use TCP, but when you start using WhatsApp video call, it might change towards UDP. Then we have HTTP and HTTPS, now used for web browsing and API calls, critical for detecting data leaks. We also have DNS, which is domain name system, used for domain resolution. Attackers may abuse it for tunneling or C2. Now, C2 is known as command and control. This is a situation whereby an attacker has gained access to your device and is already in control of your device. That's what they call C2, command and control. So DNS, which is domain name system. So what DNS actually does is that, for instance, if you visit google.com, now all websites actually have IP addresses. Now, what DNS does is, because as human beings, it will be hard for us to actually remember the IP addresses of all the websites that you visit. Imagine you want to visit google.com and you have to input IP address. You want to visit example.com, you have to input the IP address. You want to visit any website, you have to input the IP address. It will not be easy for us to remember. So what the DNS does is that when you input the domain name, for instance, google.com, so the DNS helps you to translate it into the IP address of that domain. So now your IP address goes to look for the IP address of that domain. So what makes that happen is the DNS, because the DNS helps you to translate the domain into an IP for your IP to be able to look for the IP of that website. Now we have the ICMP. Now this is Internet Control Message Protocol. Now used for diagnostics ping. Excessive ICMP may indicate a scan or DOS attack. Now, what ICMP does is that when you ping a device, the response you get for pinging that device is known as an ICMP. So when you get more of those ICMP requests, it could be an indicator of a scan or a DOS attack. Now they have the ARP, which is Address Resolution Protocol. Now helps in detecting spoofing or man-in-the-middle attack. So spoofing is a situation whereby an attacker uses probably the IP address after an attacker gains access to a network. Now, because he needs the private IP within that network to be able to crawl within that network, he could spoof a particular IP to make the IP what he or she would use. So we have basic use step by step. Okay, let's do some practicals. If you have any questions so far, you can just indicate and can ask while I open my Kali. So let's visit some sites. Let's try this. Let's try Facebook. Let's try.
Hello.
Which other websites do we visit?
Anthony.
Yeah.
Is this Wireshark?
No, I want to ensure that it's capturing packets. So I want to give it some packets to capture. That's why I'm on the browser here. So which website can we visit again? So let me say google.com.
Microsoft.com.
Okay. So I think we should have enough like that. So let's head over to our Wireshark. Okay. So now as you can see, so this is our packet pane, just like we mentioned in the. So as you can look, if you look down here, you will see packets, the number of packets that's captured that is still loading. So this is 9,100 now. If you see there, you would see the packets, the number of packets that is loading. So let me stop this. So I can stop this here. So now let's just start checking what we have here. Now, if you look under this time here now, okay, this is the numbers of the packets. So this number 61 here now. So these are the numbers, then time. This is the time when it captured the packets. This time here is the time when it captured the packet. Then source. Source is the IP address that is making a request on that network or to that server, while destination is the IP address of the server that you're actually making a request to. That is what your destination is. Then the protocol, that is the protocol that is being used at that particular moment. Then we also have the length and we have information. Now, if we check down here also, if you check down here, you would see UDP. Let's see. Now, this also gives you some information about the particular packet that you click on. So if I click on this particular packet now, it gives me more detailed, some detailed information about that particular packet I clicked on. So let's try to filter. So let me filter HTTP with HTTP, enter. So it will give me only HTTP request. Or let's go back. Okay. So I can come here to check for more filtering. Find packets. Yeah. So yeah, regular expression. Let me close this one. Find packets. So let's try and check for some sites we visited. I think we visited Facebook. All right. Now, if you look at something, you would see, yeah, if you look up here, you see a standard query. Now, this is my IP address now. My IP address is the source right now because my IP address, when my IP address was trying to look for the IP address of the Facebook server. Now, this is the Facebook server. This is the Facebook server here. So that's when it sends a query. Now, then the IP address now replied my own IP address. That is when I got a response. Now let's check it. Let's take a look at the scene I was talking about. Now, if you look at this SYN now, this place now, it says my IP address sent a SYN request to Facebook's IP using the TCP protocol. Then the Facebook IP replied with a SYN, a synchronization and acknowledgement. Then my IP now responded with an acknowledgement, which means we can start exchanging information. So this three now is known as the three-way handshake, whereby your IP first sends a SYN request to the IP address of that particular server. Then the IP address would respond to your IP with a SYN and ACK. Then your own IP responds with an acknowledgement. Then you get a client. So it means we cannot start transmitting information. That is what the TCP uses, three-way handshake. So let's take a look at some of the details down here. So let's look at TCP. Now, if you look at the source ports, when we were talking about ports, we said we have 65,535 ports. Then we have 0 to 1,000, I think 0 to 1,024 as the common ports, whereby we have some common ports, which is like 443, which is the HTTPS. Now, looking at the source ports now, I told you your end device can make requests with any of the dynamic ports. I think dynamic port was about from 45,000 or so to 65,535. So your own end device or your PC can make requests using any of the dynamic ports. Now, because it is making a request to an HTTPS website, that means it makes a request to a port 443. Can you guys see it? So it makes a request to a port 443. So the source port is 51,714, which is the port my PC used to make the request. Then it makes a request to a port 443. So this is for the Facebook. Now let's do a deeper analysis. So now if I right click on this now, then I follow stream. Now it will give me the details of what transpired between me and the website. Now, because it is an HTTPS website, the packets are actually encrypted because it is an HTTPS website. So that is what they mean by encryption on transit, whereby if you visit an HTTPS website, your data that is being transmitted is actually encrypted. So now these are the data that I transmitted just within the few minutes I visited the site. But because it is an HTTPS site, it is encrypted. So let's try to check. Let's try to filter out. Let's try to filter out another one. So we can say HTTP. So here now, let's try and walk through this. So HTTP sites. So let's see. So this is when I try to make a request to the site. You can see this is my source IP, this is destination IP. This is when it replied me. That is, the site is good to go. That is what 200 OK means. Then if I try to do a deeper analysis on this, let's say follow HTTP stream. Now you notice the difference between an HTTP site and an HTTPS. You can see that everything here is written in plain text, is not encoded. This is the same thing the Facebook site would have showed us, but because it is an HTTPS site, everything there is encrypted. Now, if we check deeper on this now, you could notice that because it is an HTTP site, everything that was transmitted between me and the site is actually being written in plain text. Let me check for the files I actually input. So there's a post request. A post request is when you're trying to input something into a site. I think I saw a post just now. Okay, so this is a post request. So let's see what we posted. So as you can see now, you can see what we posted on the site. Everything is written in plain text. You know, this is the username I used here, test Wireshark, then the card number, the email. So that is why it is always not advisable you to visit an HTTP website, because if you visit an HTTP website and an attacker or an hacker is actually capturing your packets, imagine inputting a password that you use in all your accounts and an attacker captures such, you should know what can happen like that. So this is just what Wireshark does. you could actually do more research because there are so many things you could do on Wireshark, but this is just like
Anthony, please.
all right.
This Wireshark now, is it a software on its own or is under the Kali?
It's a software on its own, it's an application, but it comes with your Kali, it comes installed in your Kali.
Okay, if you install a Kali, it's inside the Kali.
Yeah, it's inside the Kali. So you just search for Wireshark and it will bring it out for you. So another thing you can also do on Wireshark, for instance, if there's a particular IP address, let's say, let's copy this IP address 4.4.228.249.3. So let's say I want to filter out the IP address now. So I can say IP address is equal to 44.249.249.3. Enter. So it will give me everywhere that IP address actually occurred. So imagine you want to investigate a DOS attack whereby the particular IP address keeps sending SYN requests to a particular network. So you could capture such and investigate that kind of attack using a Wireshark. So as you can see, the places where this IP address occurred now. So a situation whereby I visited a site. So this is my IP address visiting the site. Then it responded with a SYN and ACK, then an acknowledgement. But for a DOS attack, you might only be seeing SYN requests because, you know, for a DOS attack, you keep sending multiple requests to that server. So the server will not be able to send an acknowledgement or a SYN and ACK because it keeps getting more response. So you might just be seeing only the IP address sending SYN request, sending SYN request. Then you should be able to know that that is actually a DOS attack coming into your network. So this is just a view of what Wireshark does. So which other site did we visit? Let's try to check the other site we visited. I think we visited Microsoft.
Google, Microsoft.
So this is Microsoft. So this is when my IP address sends a standard query that is when to look for the IP address using the DNS, which is domain name system. It's going to look for the IP address of that particular domain. So then it sends a SYN request. Now the reason why my IP wants to look for the IP address of this Microsoft is because I have not searched Microsoft on my browser before. You notice that when we checked Facebook, we did not see a DNS using a DNS protocol. Immediately the first thing we saw was a SYN request because through my cache that saves on my browser, it was able to detect that I visited that site before. So it did not need to stress itself to start using the DNS protocol to translate the domain name to an IP to start looking for the IP. Do you understand? So after it looked for the IP address, then it started the TCP request using the TCP protocol, that is the three-way handshake. So it sends a SYN request first saying, hello, who owns this IP? Then it's requested, then the IP address responded with a SYN and ACK. As you can see, you see that my IP actually sent a SYN request twice because the first time there was no response, then it sent it again. So it sent a SYN request, then the server replied with a SYN and ACK, then my own IP address replied with an acknowledgement. So if you come down here, you could also check some of the So let's try to see if we used a UDP. Did we use a UDP? So let's see if we can filter out with UDP to see if we use any UDP protocol. So UDP, all right. Okay. I don't think we made use of any UDP here. I don't think there was any UDP protocol used. All right, so this is what Wireshark, this is just an overview of what Wireshark could do. So this is an overview of what the Wireshark does. So it captures packets in real time. So let's continue with. So display filter example. So these are some of the filters that you can use to filter out your packets. So HTTP. So if you are looking for a particular IP address, then if you are looking for a particular port, then also if it is the DNS you are looking for, then also an ICMP response. Then use case malware traffic detection. Now, Wireshark can be used to monitor outgoing connections to suspicious IPs, just like you could see, whereby you could see the way your IP communicates with other IP addresses. So indicates possible C2 communication. I said command and control, whereby an hacker is already in control of your system. Then observe domain names resolved via DNS, just like the way Microsoft was resolved via DNS, because I have not searched that domain on my browser before. So it would show how it tried to resolve getting the IP address of Microsoft, just like you saw it. Then extract payloads or files from packet streams. Now, Wireshark could also be used to extract payloads or files. Now, if you are transferring a file, if a file is being transferred, files can actually be captured using Wireshark, whereby you'll be able to read what is inside the file, except if the file is encrypted. That is why you need to always encrypt your files if you are sending your files, because even if an attacker or an hacker captures your files, the hacker will take the hacker some time or years before he can encrypt that message, especially if the encryption is actually a strong encryption. So DOS and DDoS analysis, I told you that before. So identify flawed patterns of TCP SYN packet. That is where you notice that a particular IP address is just sending a SYN request and it is unable to get a response back because the request is coming in and it's flooding the server. So it's called a SYN flood, whereby a SYN request is flooding, a particular IP address is flooding the server with a SYN request, that is trying to get the IP address, trying to synchronize with the IP address. Then track ICMP echo requests with no replies. Visualize packet counts per second. Use statistics and the IO graph to see volume spikes. So, okay, I didn't show you the IO graph. So let's take a look at the graph. Under statistics, yeah, we have the IO graphs here. So you could see these spikes indicates how the Wireshark captured the particular request. That is what these spikes are. So some spikes could indicate a very serious error or an attack. I can enlarge this. So you could personally just go through some of these, then make what do you call it? Make research to know to make a deeper analysis of what that does. So All right. So capture tips and best practices. Use filters to narrow your focus. This prevents unnecessary data overload. That is, you can filter out packets using different protocols to know, or IP addresses to know what you are looking for exactly. Probably there's an IP address that looks suspicious. You could filter out that IP to know what that IP or what that IP did on your network. Then capture during off-peak hours in production. Reduce impact on performance. That is, when there is no traffic on the network, you can stop capturing. But when there's traffic, you can start your capturing. Always get permission, ethical and legal considerations when capturing network traffic. So always make sure that when you are capturing a traffic of a company, you get permission to do that, except you are just capturing your own personal traffic at home to practice. Now use ring buffers for long time captures. Avoid disk space issues during extended captures. That is, avoid disk space issues. So you should try and have a larger space. Now, limitations of Wireshark: cannot decrypt encrypted traffic. That is, when the traffic is encrypted, with when you visit an HTTPS site, it cannot decrypt the encrypted traffic, or when it's encrypted with SSL, it cannot decrypt that traffic. Now, resource intensive on high-speed networks may drop packets if CPU disk can't keep up. So if your CPU or disk cannot keep up, it might actually be dropping some packets and not capture some particular packets. Steep learning curve for beginners requires protocol knowledge and analytical thinking. That is, should be able to understand what each protocol does. HTTP protocol, TCP protocol, UDP. You should be able to have a knowledge about these protocols. Now, not an intrusion detection system. It's reactive, not proactive. That is, it does not detect. You know what an intrusion detection system does is that it detects if there is a malicious activity going on your network. But Wireshark only captures. Now, it is left for you to decide if that capture to do what it's left for you to decide what you want to do with whatever it's captured. Now we have additional tools and integrations. We have the TShark, which is the command line Wireshark version for scripting and automation. That is, TShark is the command line version. We will try and see what it does. We also have tcpdump, which is a lightweight packet sniffer for Unix or Linux. Then we have Snort and Suricata, intrusion detection engines that generate alerts. So an example of an intrusion detection system software is Snort. That is what is used for intrusion and detection. Intrusion detection, and that is an intrusion detection system software. Now we also have Zik, a powerful network analysis framework for large-scale environments. So let's take a look at the TShark and the tcpdump. So I think I stopped this already. Our browser is still ongoing, so let's open our command line. So use to all right. So TShark, let's check the commands that are under TShark. So tshark-h. So we can see some of the parameters that you can input to the TShark command. So let's try something. So let's say we want to capture ETH0. So we'll say TShark -I, which is interface, ETH 0. So let me use a root account. So I don't need to start. All right, so TShark -I. So interface, I means interface, ETH 0. So I want to capture ETH 0. Or if there's a particular IP address I want to capture, I can change source. Okay, let's try something. Let me open up my OAuth. Let me open up my OAuth. So if we try something. Check for All right, so the IP address here is 192.168.116.137. Okay. So let me first try this. So with this now, I'm saying I want to capture everything going on my ETH 0. So let's see, let's capture it. So now it will tell me it's listening. And so this is like a command line version of the Wireshark. So let's go and do some things on our browser again. Let me go here. To say this. So now you can see it is also capturing, right? So it is the same analysis with let me stop this. Stop the capture. Let's check what it's captured. So as you can see, this is the time. This one here is the time. Is the timestamp. This is the source IP. This is the source IP. This destination IP. We have more packets. So this is the source. This is the destination. So you can see it's the same thing with what Wireshark. So this is the port. This is the port. This particular source is okay. Let's look for it where we had a scene. Okay. So let's say I'm trying to look for a scene request so you can just acknowledgements. Okay, can you see this one too? This is where DNS is trying to get the IP address of google.com. So I want to look for a three-way handshake where it uses the TCP protocol. Okay, if you look at this place now, this is where my IP address made a request to this server's IP using the TCP protocol. Now I made a request, my PC made a request from port 52,156. It's made a request to port 443, which is an HTTPS website. Then there was an acknowledgement from that site. So let me try something again. So let me ping my apps now. Let me ping let's say example.com. So it's pinging now. So let me go to this place. So let me say I want you to capture a particular source now. So I'll say SRC, the IP address of that 192.168.116.137. So now it captures requests only on that. As you can see, it's capturing requests only on that particular IP I told you, which is my OAuth workstation. So this is what TShark, this is where TShark works. So the same thing goes for.
I can't see your screen.
You can't see my screen. Can every other person see my screen?
We can see it now.
Yes, we can see
Yeah, I
it.
guess it's your network, so you might rejoin again.
Let him rejoin.
Your screen is
All
blank
right.
here.
Try to rejoin again.
Can you hear me?
You can leave and join again.
Leave and join again. It's network issue.
So we can also do the same thing with the TCP dump. So I can say TCP dump dash IETH0. So it just gives you a quick analysis of the packet that is being captured. So if you look at it now, this is the timestamp. So this is an IP, this is my IP address now. Okay, no, this is the IP address of the OAuth. So this is what is happening here. So it's using this port to make a request. So let's try to do some things on our.
Please, is anybody seeing the screen as well?
We
We are
can see
seeing
the
the screen. We can see the screen.
You can just try to
Okay,
yeah, leave and join back. Yeah.
thank you.
Leave and join with the link.
Right. Let's see. So you can just practice on your own too to see how to capture packets using these tools.